The day I turned 65, a milestone I had anticipated with joy, I found myself gazing at the numbers in my bank account, millions that represented years of hard work and sacrifice. But as I settled into this new chapter, a shadow loomed over my heart, for that very day, I received the call that shattered my world. My only daughter was gone, lost in a tragic plane crash, leaving behind a silence that echoed through the halls of my life. Make sure you watch till the very end, and comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story travels. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more unbelievable true stories. When I turned 65, I felt a quiet pride in the life I had built. My investments had grown steadily, securing a comfortable retirement, and my home, nestled in the suburbs, was a sanctuary where I had hoped to enjoy peaceful years ahead. My daughter, Emily, was the light of my life, brilliant, compassionate, and fiercely independent. She had just landed a promising job with an international charity, a cause close to her heart, and I was looking forward to watching her thrive. But all of that changed one chilly autumn morning when the phone rang, rattling the calm I had taken for granted. The voice on the other end was somber and unfamiliar. "Miss Amelia, I'm terribly sorry to inform you that your daughter, Emily, was involved in a plane crash. It's not looking good." I remember the words, but not the moment they sank in. My mind went blank, the world closing off in a suffocating silence. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. The secure life I had carefully crafted shattered with those few devastating words. The days that followed blurred into a haze of grief and disbelief. The news confirmed what I dreaded: Emily had died in that crash, her life cut short in an instant. At the memorial service, surrounded by family and friends, I found myself adrift, struggling to process the enormity of the loss. The room was filled with flowers and condolences, yet none of it reached me. It was during this fragile time that something unexpected happened. 3 young women, strangers to me, approached quietly. They were dressed in dark clothes, their expressions somber but familiar in a way I couldn't place. They stepped forward and, with voices barely above a whisper, said, "We came to say goodbye to Emily." I blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" I asked, my voice cracking. One of them, the tallest, nodded gently. "We're her friends from the charity project she was working on. We wanted to be here to honor her." Their presence stirred a strange mixture of emotions inside me: surprise, curiosity, and an uneasy sense that there was more to Emily's life than I had known. Later, as I sat alone in my study, the room heavy with memories, I found myself replaying our last conversations. Emily had always been open with me, sharing her dreams and challenges. Yet, these young women hinted at chapters of her life I'd never glimpsed. Why had she kept this part secret? I felt a gnawing need to understand, to connect with the fragments of her world that had been hidden from me. The following morning, I resolved to visit the office where Emily had worked. Perhaps, I thought, meeting her colleagues could help me piece together the woman she had become. Walking through the doors, the scent of paper and coffee mixed with a quiet hum of activity. Faces turned toward me, some familiar, many strangers. A woman approached, her eyes kind but cautious. "You must..." "I'm Lisa, Emily's supervisor." Lisa's presence was a balm and a reminder of the reality I faced. She spoke of Emily's dedication, her tireless work with vulnerable communities, and her passion for making a difference. Yet, she also revealed the pressures Emily bore, the challenges of balancing hope with harsh realities. As Lisa spoke, I realized how much of Emily's life I had only seen in fragments, how much had been lived beyond my reach. In the days that followed, I found myself drawn deeper into Emily's world. I met others who had worked alongside her, young volunteers, local leaders, and friends who painted a picture of a woman who had embraced her mission with fierce determination. Each encounter brought new insights but also new questions. Emily's life was richer and more complex than I had imagined. One afternoon, I received a call from a man named David. He said he had been close to Emily during her last project overseas. His voice was steady, yet I sensed a weight beneath his words. Emily was brave and kind. She touched many lives in ways we're only beginning to understand. Hearing this, I felt a flicker of connection, a thread linking me to the daughter I loved and the woman she had become beyond my presence. Despite the comfort these new connections offered, I couldn't shake the feeling that Emily had kept parts of herself hidden, even from me. The realization was painful. I had always believed we shared everything, that I knew my daughter fully. Now, I was faced with the truth that life had complexities I hadn't seen, and that Emily's story was still unfolding in ways I was only beginning to grasp. As I stood at the edge of this new reality, I was filled with a mixture of grief and determination. Emily's life had been cut short, but her spirit lived on through the people she had touched and the causes she had championed. I knew that understanding her fully meant embracing the unknown, stepping beyond my grief to uncover the legacy she had begun to build. That evening, I sat in my quiet home, the night wrapping around me like a cloak. I picked up a photo of Emily, a snapshot of her smiling in a sunlit field, her eyes bright with hope and purpose. The image stirred something deep within me, a resolve to honor her memory not just with words, but with action. I wasn't sure where this path would lead, but I knew I had to follow it. Tomorrow, I decided, I would begin the journey to uncover the full story of Emily's life, the dreams she chased, the challenges she faced, and the secret parts she had kept from me. It was a journey born from loss but fueled by love, a chance to transform my grief into something meaningful. And though the road ahead was uncertain, I was ready to walk it, one step at a time. In the days following my visit to Emily's office, I found myself consumed by a restless need to learn more about her work, her friends, and the life she had chosen far from the safety of our home. The grief that had once numbed me began to sharpen into a focused curiosity, a determination to uncover the parts of Emily's story that had remained hidden. It was as if the daughter I thought I knew was only a fragment of a much larger picture, and I was eager, even desperate, to see it whole. I started by reaching out to the people Lisa had mentioned, volunteers and colleagues who had stood beside Emily during her projects. One afternoon, I met with Maria, a young woman who had worked closely with Emily on a community development initiative in a remote village. Maria's eyes brightened as she spoke, but there was a sadness beneath her enthusiasm. Emily was incredible, Maria said, her voice trembling slightly. She threw herself into everything, long days, difficult conditions, but she never lost hope. She believed that even the smallest change could ripple outward and make a difference. Hearing this made me proud, but also painfully aware of how little I had understood the depth of Emily's commitment. Maria shared stories of their travels, the people they met, and the challenges they faced, disease outbreaks, political unrest, and the constant struggle to secure funding and resources. I listened, imagining Emily in these far-flung places, away from the comforts of home, driven by a fierce desire to help. It was a side of her I had only glimpsed in passing conversations, overshadowed by the daily routines we shared. As I delved deeper, I encountered a complexity that unsettled me. Some of Emily's colleagues spoke of disagreements and tensions within the projects, differences in approach, the frustration of bureaucracy, and the heavy toll the work took on those involved. It was clear that Emily's path was not without its hardships, and that her passion often came with personal sacrifice. One evening, as I sifted through emails and messages I had asked Lisa to share, I stumbled upon correspondence between Emily and a man named David. His name had come up briefly before, but these letters revealed a closer bond. Their exchanges were filled with discussions about strategy, hopes for the future, and moments of vulnerability that surprised me. Curious, I reached out to David. When we spoke, his voice was steady but carried the weight of loss. Emily was more than a colleague, he said quietly. She was a friend, a confidant. We shared dreams about the impact we could have, but also fears, about the dangers, the uncertainties. She carried so much on her shoulders, sometimes without letting anyone see. David painted a portrait of Emily as a woman who had embraced risk in pursuit of her ideals. He spoke of late nights planning initiatives, of moments when Emily doubted herself but pushed forward regardless. There was a tenderness in his recollections, a sense of camaraderie forged in both triumph and adversity. As our conversations continued, David shared insights into Emily's last project, a humanitarian effort in a volatile region where access was limited and dangers were real. He hinted at the challenges they faced, the obstacles they overcame, and the risks that ultimately led to the fatal crash. Through his words, I sensed a mixture of pride and pain, a recognition of Emily's courage and the heavy cost it exacted. Despite the comfort of these new connections, I struggled with the realization that Emily had chosen to keep much of this life separate from me. Why hadn't she shared these struggles, these dreams? Was it to protect me from worry, or was there a part of her that needed to stand alone? The questions gnawed at me, fueling a restless ache. Determined to understand more, I began to review the materials Emily had left behind: journals, reports, and photographs she had kept in a worn leather satchel. Each page offered glimpses into her world, detailed notes on community meetings, candid photos of children she had helped, and reflections on the broader impact of their work. Her handwriting was neat but infused with urgency, a testament to the life she led in the margins of danger and hope. One entry stood out, a passage where Emily wrote about the importance of trust and connection, about how the relationships they built were the foundation for lasting change. She described moments of joy amid hardship, and the bittersweet knowledge that their work was never finished. Reading her words, I felt closer to her than I had in months, touched by the passion and resilience that defined her. Yet, the deeper I delved, the more I realized how little I truly knew. Emily was not just my daughter, she was a woman who had carved a path through complexity and challenge, often in silence. The contradictions unsettled me: the loving daughter who called home regularly, and the fearless advocate who embraced danger to serve others. Reconciling these facets was a struggle I hadn't anticipated. One afternoon, while sorting through a box of personal items, I found a letter addressed to me, written but never sent. It was a heartfelt message from Emily, explaining why she had kept certain parts of her life private. She spoke of wanting to shield me from fear, to protect the life we shared from the shadows of her work. She also expressed hope that, in time, I would understand and support her choices. The letter brought tears I hadn't known I needed to shed. It was a bridge between our worlds, a glimpse into her heart that I had longed for but never received. It also sparked a new resolve within me, to honor Emily not by clinging to the past, but by embracing the fullness of her life, including its complexities and sacrifices. As I continued this journey, I became increasingly aware of how Emily's passions and risks had shaped not only her own story but the lives of those around her. The network of people she had touched was vast and varied, each with their own memories and experiences. I realized that to truly understand her, I needed to listen to these voices, to step beyond my grief and into the world she had inhabited. The weight of this realization was immense. It challenged me to confront my own assumptions and fears, and to open my heart to the unknown. I found myself asking questions I hadn't dared before. Who was Emily beyond the daughter I knew? What dreams had driven her into danger? And most profoundly, what legacy had she left behind that I could now carry forward? In the quiet moments between meetings and conversations, I often reflected on the journey that had brought me here, from the shock of loss to the complex web of discovery. Each revelation was a thread, weaving a tapestry of a life lived with courage and purpose. Though the pain of her absence lingered, I felt a stirring of hope, that through understanding, I might find a way to honor Emily's memory in a manner worthy of her spirit. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with questions as much as answers. But I was no longer content to stand on the sidelines of her story. I was ready to step into the unknown, to uncover the truth she had kept, and to embrace the challenge of carrying forward a legacy born from both risk and love. As the weeks turned into months, my search for answers led me further from the familiar contours of my life and deeper into the world Emily had embraced. The fragments I had gathered, stories from colleagues, letters from David, and Emily's own writings, began to coalesce into a clearer picture. Yet, it was only when I uncovered the truth about her final humanitarian project that the full weight of her choices came into sharp focus. David had invited me to meet some of Emily's closest associates from the project, a group dedicated to rebuilding communities devastated by conflict and poverty. They welcomed me with open arms, their grief mingling with pride as they recounted Emily's role in their mission. Through their eyes, I saw a woman who was both fearless and vulnerable, a leader who bore the burdens of her work with quiet strength. It was during one of these meetings that I learned the true nature of the region Emily had been working in, a place fraught with political instability, where aid workers faced constant threats from armed groups and shifting alliances. The project aimed to provide clean water, education, and medical care to villages caught in the crossfire, but the risks were immense. Emily had known this, yet she chose to go, driven by a conviction that the people there deserved hope and dignity. Listening to their stories, I felt a mixture of admiration and fear. I realized how little I had grasped about the dangers Emily faced daily. She wasn't just a well-meaning volunteer. She was a woman confronting harsh realities with courage that often bordered on recklessness. And yet, her commitment never wavered. One afternoon, David took me aside to share what he called the final days. He spoke softly, the pain still raw in his voice. Emily had been working on a new initiative to expand access to clean water in a particularly remote area. It was dangerous, but she believed it was critical. The trip back from that site was when the crash happened. His words painted a somber scene, Emily pushing boundaries, risking everything for a cause she believed in. As I absorbed this, I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Pride in her bravery, grief for the loss, and a simmering anger that she had taken such risks without telling me, without letting me share in her fears and hopes. But beneath it all was an overwhelming respect for the woman Emily had been, one who chose to live fully, even when the stakes were so high. That night, I sat with Emily's journals spread before me, rereading passages that now took on new meaning. She wrote about the people she met, their resilience, their kindness, and their struggles. She reflected on the sacrifices required, the toll it took on her physically and emotionally. But most poignantly, she wrote about hope, the belief that even in the darkest places, change was possible. Her words stirred something deep inside me. I understood that the secrecy, the silence, was not just about shielding me, it was also about protecting the mission, about allowing herself to forge a path unencumbered by doubt or distraction. Emily had carried a heavy burden, one that few of us could fully comprehend, and she had borne it alone. In the days that followed, I grappled with what I had learned. The circumstances of the crash, once a vague tragedy, now felt like the culmination of a life lived on the edge of sacrifice. Emily's choices had been deliberate, her courage unquestionable. And yet, I was left with the profound question of how to honor her legacy. I found myself drawn to the idea of continuing her work, of turning my grief into action. But the prospect was daunting. I was a woman of numbers and investments, not fieldwork or humanitarian aid. Yet, as I spoke with Emily's colleagues and friends, I realized that my resources and connections could make a meaningful difference. Supporting the causes she had championed was a way to keep her spirit alive. One evening, as I sat quietly in the dim light of my study, I made a decision. I would dedicate myself to preserving and advancing Emily's vision. I would reach out to the organizations she had worked with and explore how best to use what I had to carry forward her mission. It was a commitment born of love and respect, a way to transform the pain of loss into something constructive. But I also knew that this path would not be easy. The realities of humanitarian work were complex and often fraught with setbacks. There would be challenges, bureaucracy, politics, and the ever-present dangers that Emily had faced. Yet, I felt a growing resolve to meet these obstacles head-on, inspired by the example she had set. As I began making connections and learning more about the projects in need of support, I encountered stories that reaffirmed the importance of the work. Tales of children gaining access to education, families receiving clean water, and communities rebuilding after devastation. These were the legacies Emily had helped create, and they fueled my determination. Through these efforts, I also found a measure of healing. Engaging with the people and projects Emily had cared for helped bridge the gap left by her absence. It brought me closer to the woman she was, and in turn, softened the sharp edges of my grief. I discovered that honoring her legacy was not just about charity, it was about connection, purpose, and hope. Yet, even as I embraced this new role, I remained aware of the complex emotions beneath the surface. The anger, the sorrow, the questions about what might have been, all lingered. I knew that the journey ahead would require patience and strength, both to navigate the practical challenges and to come to terms with the personal loss. One afternoon, I received a message from David, inviting me to visit the project site. He believed that seeing the work firsthand would deepen my understanding and commitment. The idea both excited and unnerved me. It meant stepping fully into Emily's world, confronting the realities she had faced every day. As I prepared for the trip, I thought about the path that had brought me here, from the shock of her death to this moment of decision. I was no longer just a grieving father, I was becoming a custodian of her dreams. The responsibility was immense, but so was the honor. Sitting by the window, watching the fading light, I felt a quiet resolve settle within me. Emily's life had been a tapestry of courage, sacrifice, and hope. I was determined to carry that thread forward, weaving it into the fabric of my own story. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since her passing, I felt a sense of purpose that transcended pain. Tomorrow, I would take the first step toward that future, one born of loss, but fueled by love. The morning I boarded the plane to visit Emily's project site, a swirl of emotions churned inside me, nervousness, hope, and a lingering ache I knew would never fully fade. As the aircraft lifted off, I gazed out the window, watching the familiar landscape shrink beneath me. I was leaving behind the comfort of my home and stepping into a world Emily had inhabited with such fierce dedication. It was a world I was determined to understand, no matter the challenges it held. Arriving at the remote village where the project was based, I was immediately struck by the stark contrast to my own life, the dust-filled air, the simple homes crafted from earth and wood, and the faces of people whose resilience shone through hardship. I was greeted warmly by David and the team, their expressions a mix of solemn respect and cautious optimism. They welcomed me not only as Emily's father but as a new ally in their mission. In the days that followed, I witnessed firsthand the impact of Emily's work, the wells that brought fresh water, the classrooms buzzing with eager children, and the clinics where basic medical care saved lives. Each visit deepened my understanding of the complexities they faced: limited resources, unpredictable weather, and the ever-present threat of unrest. But what stood out most was the unwavering hope that fueled these efforts, a hope that Emily had nurtured and that now rested partly on my shoulders. I quickly realized that supporting these initiatives required more than financial backing. It demanded patience, cultural sensitivity, and a willingness to navigate bureaucratic hurdles and local politics. I found myself in meetings with local leaders and international aid organizations, learning to advocate for the causes Emily had championed. The challenges were daunting, yet every small victory, a new water pump installed, a teacher hired, felt like a tribute to her legacy. At night, I reflected on the transformation unfolding within me. Grief still lingered, but it was mingled with purpose. The pain of loss was no longer a paralyzing force but a catalyst for action. I was becoming part of a community bound by shared commitment, and in doing so, I found a measure of healing. One afternoon, I visited a school Emily had helped establish. Children greeted me with shy smiles and curious eyes, their innocence a poignant reminder of what was at stake. A young girl approached, holding out a drawing she had made, a vivid portrait of Emily surrounded by scenes of the village. The simple gift moved me deeply, bridging the gap between my world and theirs. As weeks passed, I worked closely with David and the team, navigating the logistical and emotional complexities of the projects. There were setbacks, funding delays, equipment failures, and moments when progress seemed painfully slow. Yet, each challenge reinforced the resilience that Emily had admired in the people she served. Back home, I coordinated with Margaret, Emily's childhood friend, who had stepped forward to help organize fundraising and awareness campaigns. Together, we began to build a network of support, connecting donors, volunteers, and advocates. Margaret's energy and insight were invaluable, and our shared love for Emily forged a bond that eased the loneliness of this journey. Through these efforts, I felt my perspective shift. The world I had known, one defined by financial security and routine, expanded to include the messy, beautiful realities of humanitarian work. I learned to listen more, to trust those on the ground, and to celebrate the small but significant changes that brought hope to fragile communities. In one particularly moving moment, I attended a ceremony honoring Emily's contributions. Local leaders spoke of her compassion and determination, recounting stories of her kindness and courage. As I stood among them, surrounded by people whose lives she had touched, I felt a profound connection, not only to Emily but to the broader cause she had embraced. Yet, amidst the progress, the weight of responsibility was ever present. I grappled with doubts about my ability to sustain these efforts, to do justice to Emily's memory. There were nights when exhaustion and sorrow threatened to overwhelm me, but the support of those around me, David, Margaret, the villagers, reminded me that I was not alone. One evening, as I sat watching the sun set over the dusty horizon, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the shock of losing my daughter to the challenges of stepping into her world, I had been transformed. I had discovered a purpose beyond grief, a way to honor Emily's spirit through action and commitment. The path was far from easy, but it was filled with meaning. Each day brought new lessons, new connections, and new reasons to believe in the power of hope and resilience. I realized that by embracing Emily's legacy, I was not only preserving her memory but also finding a way to heal my own broken heart. As I prepared to return home, I carried with me a renewed sense of purpose and a promise to continue this work, to support those who shared Emily's vision, and to ensure that her dreams would not be forgotten. The road ahead would be long, but I was ready to walk it, guided by love and fueled by the enduring impact of a daughter who had changed the world in ways I was only beginning to understand. Back home, the quiet of my house was both comforting and haunting. The room still held Emily's presence in subtle ways, the faint scent of her favorite perfume, the book she'd left on the shelf, the empty chair at the kitchen table where she used to share her thoughts. Yet, amid this silence, I felt a profound shift within myself. The journey I had embarked on, from grief to action, had reshaped not only how I understood Emily but how I viewed life itself. Reflecting on the months since her passing, I saw how her passion and courage had illuminated paths I never knew existed. Losing her was the deepest pain I had ever known, but in that loss, I found a new purpose. The work I had begun to support wasn't just about charity or legacy, it was about embracing the enduring power of love and commitment in the face of tragedy. I often thought back to the first time I met David and the team, the strangers who became my guides into Emily's world. They had shown me the impact of her work, not just in statistics or reports, but in the lives transformed by hope and care. Through their stories, I saw Emily not just as my daughter but as a beacon of light in places shadowed by hardship. The decision to carry forward her vision was not without its challenges. There were moments when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming, when setbacks threatened to erode the progress we'd made. But each time, I reminded myself that this was exactly what Emily would have wanted, that her dreams would not end with her passing but would continue to inspire and uplift. Margaret remained a steadfast partner in this journey. Together, we built a community of supporters who shared our commitment to Emily's causes. The network grew, connecting people across continents, united by a shared belief in the possibility of change. It was a testament to the ripple effect one life could have, and it filled me with hope. As the projects flourished, I found myself transformed. The grief that once consumed me had softened into a quiet strength, a resilience born from purpose and connection. Emily's spirit lived on in the laughter of children at the village school, in the clean water flowing from new wells, and in the hearts of those who carried her torch. At times, I still felt the sting of loss, the empty spaces where her voice and presence used to be. But I had come to understand that grief was not a burden to bear alone but a bridge to deeper understanding and growth. Through honoring her legacy, I honored her life and the love we shared. One afternoon, as I walked through a garden we had helped create in her memory, I paused to reflect on how far we had come. The flowers bloomed brightly, a living symbol of resilience and renewal. It struck me that, like those blossoms, life could emerge from sorrow, vibrant and hopeful. I often wonder what advice Emily might offer to others facing loss. Perhaps she would say to embrace the pain, to seek connection, and to find ways to transform grief into meaningful action. Her journey, though cut short, was a testament to the power of courage and compassion. Now, as I sit by the window, watching the day fade into evening, I invite you to share your thoughts. Have you experienced a loss that led you to unexpected places? How have you found purpose amid pain? Your stories matter, and together, we can honor those we have lost by carrying their light forward. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.